Why would God allow you to think someone was the one, even though He knew that this person really wasn't the one? Here are four possible explanations. Number one, because this was an important part of your maturing journey that will equip you for the marriage He does have for you one day. To better understand how God often matures us for marriage, let's take a step back and use a different analogy and think about the career path that God often leads people on. So, for the normal, typical person, one path is that they go to high school, they graduate, and then they often go to college or enter a trade and gain some valuable knowledge. And then they typically again, graduate from college or that trade school and get an entry level position. They work there for a few years and they either get a promotion there or they move companies to move up the career ladder. And then somewhere usually in their 30s or 40s, they have enough experience to then go after the career or the position that they would really want. Here's what doesn't happen for the normal person. They graduate high school and they instantly get their dream job and stay in that position forever. So I say all of that because this same process often happens in relationships and leading to marriage. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing. I'm not saying that you can't find the one until you're in your 30s or 40s. I'm not saying that, but generally speaking, there is some sort of maturing process that occurs for the average Christian that God uses to prepare them to be ready for the marriage He has for them. And oftentimes that includes a relationship or even just a strong feeling that someone was the one who ended up not being the one. May we submit to the truth found in Psalm 32, verse 8. I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you. Number two, to expose the errors in your relationship processing skills. Now, please note in point one, I never said that God will make you believe that someone is the one who is not the one. In context in this video, I'm using the language, why would God allow you to think that? One reason God allows this type of thing and other errors to occur in our thinking and in our lives is to expose the errors that are there. Was it infatuation? Was it a sexual sin that blinded you to all the red flags? Or was it just simply a lack of patience that if you would have given it more time, you would have then realized this was not who God wanted you with? Through this experience, God will expose errors that have been occurring, and then the correction of these errors will help you down the line actually identify the person He does have for you. Big picture, if you're humble, God will correct you and mature you. Number three, because God gives us the freedom to make decisions of consequence. Whenever we begin to think about the sovereignty of God, it creates a dilemma in our minds and in our hearts because we end up imagining that this means God micromanages everything and really our choices don't matter anymore because God's sovereign plan always happens. But when you actually read the scriptures, you quickly realize this is not the conclusion that God has us to make, and that's just not what's really happening. Yes, God does truly have a sovereign plan, and that's unmistakable when you read the scriptures. However, you also see people truly making decisions of consequence that actually have good and bad outcomes because of what they did or didn't do. And so rather than thinking that we're just robots, what we need to say is that God is so sovereign that even through our free choices, He actually brings about His ultimate plan. What would be more powerful to do? To micromanage everybody and create His plan through brute force? Or would it actually be more powerful for Him to allow people to make free choices that they're actually making, and He still is powerful enough to produce the final outcomes that He has planned to produce? Obviously, we can't fully understand and wrap our minds around this huge topic of God's sovereignty and man's free will. And honestly, as Christians, we don't need to fully comprehend it. Rather, when we read the scriptures, we need to accept the scriptures. We need to accept what we see God doing. God is sovereign, and we make free choices that actually have good and bad consequences. And that principle and truth plays out in our thought life, including when it comes to our thoughts about assuming someone is the one even though they're not the one. God isn't micromanaging our thought life, implanting thoughts and making us think a certain way. Rather, God gives us freedom, that freedom we all desire. None of us would want to be robots. But with that freedom comes responsibility, so we can't then blame God for us making free bad choices to assume someone was the one when they're not the one. That wasn't God's fault. That was our choice. So rather than get angry at God or get confused at all this sovereignty and man's free will talk, rather what we need to do is believe that God is so powerful and so gracious that even though we live imperfectly, He's still powerful enough and gracious enough to produce the good plan that He has for us, even though we're not going to be perfect. And number 4, to draw us closer to Himself. While relationships and marriage are certainly a big blessing from God, ultimately the best thing, the most loving thing God does for people is to draw them to Himself, because God is love. God is the perfect one that we need. So whether it be through joy or pain, clarity or confusion, God's ultimate goal for His people is to increase their joy in Him. As Jeremiah 31:11 states, I have loved you with an everlasting love. I have drawn you with unfailing kindness. So how can you really know when God's revealing the one to you? I unpack that important question in this 3-part video series right here. I'm Mark from ApplyGodsWord.com. Make sure you're subscribed so we can stay in touch and you can get more relationship biblical advice. I'll see you at the next video.